Chapter 38 in our annual cycle of the study of Tanya. So now that we explained how important action is, and the purpose of our soul coming down to this world is to do the actions within the physical matter, with their physical body, etc., we'll understand what it says in the Torah, in the Talmud, that thought is not like speaking. Meaning all the mitzvahs that God gave us, that you have to say something. You can't say it in your mind. You have to say it verbally, like we mentioned before. All the blessings, prayer, Torah study, Shema, have to be verbalized. And the truth is that even if you have no intent and think about what you're saying, generally it's passable. It's considered a mitzvah. Only in very few things. The first verse of Shema, the beginning and end of Amidah, there you have to also think and have intent. But otherwise, it passes. But if you have all the intentions and the thoughts of what you're trying to say, but you don't verbalize it, you have nothing. Because the neshama didn't come down to this world for itself. It came down to draw godliness down into the physical body, into physical matter. But even though most important is action, but if you just verbalize but you don't have any intent, it's like considered like a body without a soul. What does that mean? Everything in this world has a soul. Everything it has vitality. That vitality comes from the soul. By the way, even inanimate things also have a soul, because that's their existence. The ability for something to exist is God's spark that exists within that object. So God's Spirit gives the stone the ability to exist, even though it seems like it has no vitality, no life. So obviously there's a big difference between the soul vitality and the body vitality. So even though we all have a godly spirit that gives us the existence, etc., but they're very, very different, because though both are creations, even the soul is a creation of God. But the creation of God, the way it happened in this world, came through many different processes, and there are different types of contractions, powerful contractions that change the quality of what it is, regular contractions, the descent, like a chain, like the succession, the flow, the way it runs through different things. So therefore, the illumination of godliness and various things are very, very different. So the inanimate, it's totally hidden. In the next one, sameach, and vegetative, it's less hidden. You see growth, but it doesn't move much. In chai, in the animal kingdom, the illumination of God is much more. There's movement in all types of ways. There's expression. And then you have in the human where it's intellect and it's the full capacity. So the illumination of God, even though they're all creation, are very different in all these four. And these four actually correspond to the four letters of God's name, holy name. The Yud and Hey are the first part, represent man and animal. And the Vav and Hey, the last part, represent vegetative and inanimate. So too, the vitality in the action and the kavanah and intent is very, very different. And obviously in intent, it's much stronger. You feel godliness much stronger. Not that it's greater than action. As we explained before, action is the most important. But just like God wants our action, He also wants our kavanah, our thoughts, our intention of what we're doing. And He wants us to attach ourselves to Him internally through the kavanah, through the thoughts that we have and the feelings. While we're doing the mitzvah, we're verbalizing the various things. So the illumination in this, that comes through the thinking and the kavanah is much greater. Just like the soul over the body. They're both part of God's creation, but the soul is much more vitality of godliness than the body. And actually the body and the soul are broken down into these four categories. The body represents inanimate and vegetative. It has parts of us that seems like there's very little life, and then there's just growth. But where is the greatest illumination of presence, of godliness, of ability, of our essence, of ourself, is in the soul, which represents the higher two categories of people and animals. And here as well in the soul, the kavanah could go in two directions. Humans represent intellect. Intellect is the ability to think, meditate, and on our own wake ourselves up to God and have a longing for God that comes through the intellect that we have. That's the human aspect. The animal aspect is, let's say we can't really meditate and delve into it. We're not able to awaken within ourselves anything. So we can tap into something that we have naturally, the natural love of God. And that's more compared to the animal, because the animal, whatever they have is natural. That's the way they were created. They don't make anything up themselves. So we, in the soul, can reach one of these two things, the human or the animal aspect. But God is much more illuminated through there, and that's why God wants the kavana, our thoughts. Obviously, the action is most important, but He wants our thoughts very much, because He wants us to connect and unite ourselves with Him by illuminating ourselves through the thoughts of God, illuminating our mind and our heart as well. This concludes chapter 38. To watch any of the other videos on Tanya, go to Chabad of the Town YouTube channel.